Serpents Mound, a great mound built in Ohio by ancient Native Americans. It is in the southern center of Ohio by the Ohio Bush Creek River. The mound is 1,348 feet long and about 4 feet high. It is the largest surviving prehistoric effigy in the world. There is no concrete evidence as to why it was built or when it was built. There is a timeline given by the archaeologist Frederick Ward Putnam, also known as the father of American archaeology, that the mound was built between 800 BC to 400 AD by the Adena, Hopewell, and Fort Ancient people. The timeline here is given. However, archaeologists believed the mound had religious and honorary significance. For instance, a book in the 1880s written by archaeologists and contributed by F.W. Putnam states that there must have been a powerful influence in the people that built the mound. The authors state that the influence was religious because the snake is a symbolic animal and the effigy is in the shape of a snake. The climate in Ohio is temperate. The summers and winters are mild. In the southern part of Ohio, where the citizens of the urban center lived, the climate was warm, with an average of 51 degrees annually. The first people that lived around the urban center were the Adena people. They lived in the Ohio River Valley from 700 BC to 200 AD. They had a culture of mound building. They would build large earth mounds and bury dead people in there. It can be inferred due to carbon dating by archaeologists and artifacts recovered from these sites that they had religious ceremonies. The Adena may have had a structured religion. However, there is no evidence that they had a structured government. They were mostly nomadic. However, archaeological findings show that the Adena were involved in an extensive trade network with coastal tribes on the east coast of modern-day United States. At around 200 AD, the Adena culture dispersed, and a new group of Native Americans came to that area. They were called Hopewell. They were named after the farm archaeologists dug up in the 1800s. The Hopewell were more advanced than the Adena culture. They did not travel by foot or horseback to trade that often to faraway lands. Instead, the Hopewell developed canoes and traveled to nearby tribes through rivers. This is called the Hopewell interaction sphere. Furthermore, they traded many exotic materials such as copper, obsidian, shark teeth, mica, and grizzly bear teeth. The Hopewell culture were mainly farmers. They would grow an array of different crops, such as nuts, seeds, rice, and tobacco. Tobacco use was very prevalent among Native Americans, but especially in Ohio. The main export of the Hopewell people was tobacco. There is not much known about the government of the Hopewell culture. However, based on the trade routes, they had an exchange system in the north of modern-day United States, connected by rivers. Archaeologists concluded that for their government, they had a simple chiefdom. The economy of the Hopewell was sustainable and healthily lasted for half a millennium. At around 500 AD, the culture collapsed. Archaeologists believe that the cause for the collapse was due to environmental difficulties and a failure of trade networks. The successors for the Hopewell people were the Fort Ancient people. The Fort Ancient culture was around during the late Woodland period from 450 AD through 1400 AD. This period is poorly known. However, there are some new advances and differences from the preceding cultures. For instance, the building of mounds and the mound culture seem to have been abandoned. The extensive trade network was halted, and the main food sources were corn and wild animals. A new technology was created: the bow and arrow, used for hunting wild animals. The population seemed to have grown because excavation and archaeological evidence shows that this culture was sedentary, and they relied heavily on agriculture, possibly caused by an increase in the population. There was also a large social change during this period, because people were not buried in mounds. Instead, they were often cremated. Only the important people seemed to be buried in a stone mound near the village, with ornaments around the mound. The ornaments were mainly red, signifying power. Instead of burying people in Serpents Mound, it is believed that the Fort Ancient people used the mound for rituals. When the European settlers began to arrive in the late 1400s, it can be inferred that the Native Americans of Ohio began to move west, or were unfortunately killed by the Europeans. All these cultures lived in the Ohio River Valley by Serpents Mound, and were the main political powerhouses during this time period from 1000 BC to 1400 AD. They were the powerhouses up until the European settlers came and ruined many of the societies and governments put in place by these Native Americans.